Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, awesome topic. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about biohacking and more. We're going to talk about some cool stuff with my guest. My guest today is Sandy Martin, a biohacker, author, and founder of bioEDGE. After spending nearly $100,000 trying to recover from a brain injury caused by mold exposure. And we're going to talk about that. Sandy discovered something most people miss. Healing isn't about doing more, it's about removing what's blocking the body from working properly. She's now on a mission to help people stop wasting money on the wrong protocols and instead understand the signals their body is sending. Author of Biological Edge, that's Biological Edge, a practical guide to longevity. Sandy brings a powerful practical perspective to the world of biohacking and true healing. Please welcome Sandy Martin. Sandy,
Thank
eh,
you. It's so nice to meet
longevity,
you.
it's an honor and a pleasure. I mean, first of all, two key words that I love in the world that I'm in: longevity, biohacking. Technical ones, but I think everyone that's watching and listening can use them and needs them.
Yes.
But
And it's
yes,
not necessarily a dirty word, biohacking, because it simply means that we're making adjustments to our internal and external environment for our own benefit. But I do like to say that biohacking starts with no, because it starts with what we stop. And if we aren't removing the things that are harming us, there's no pill or protocol that's going to overcome the damage we do to ourselves every day, from stress to diet to what have you. And so we have to make sure that we've got ourselves in order. And it's hard, really hard. Got to take baby steps, but we can't ignore what we do to ourselves.
well, Sandy, it's funny. I mean, you said it starts with no, and it's funny because I, you and I, we had the brief discussion about, a little background. So I've been in sales, and one of the things I learned in sales is like salesmanship begins when the customer says no. So we have
Mm,
something in common.
yeah, right.
It
Yeah,
starts with a no. No is the beginning of, I guess, handling objections, handling problems, and
it
really this is a
is.
similar concept, but it just deals with our health. And I love that's also your guide, right? That's kind of like
Hmm.
your message on your guide. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll talk about all that, but your story. I mean, I kind of
Mm.
mentioned you spent a lot of money trying to recover from a brain surgery because of mold exposure. So let's go back there, because a lot of people, especially in the States, mold is very it's happening. It's
It's
almost every
everywhere.
house. Everybody has it. If
Mhm.
you have a little basement, you probably have it.
Mhm.
Water leaks, blah blah blah. You have an attic. So let's talk about that and some of the damage, if you don't mind, like just at least
Sure.
guide people, because I think that's a big dilemma that we need to address, and it's even like something that you have to disclose if you're in real estate and all this stuff. But also, what it did to you, and what are the dangers of really being exposed to something like that.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that a lot of autoimmune conditions where the body becomes so inflamed that it starts to attack itself could have at the basis of it an environmental toxic exposure like mold. And there's no test to determine many of these autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. A lot of these things don't have yep, that's what it is. It's like a basket of symptoms. And then they look at the basket of symptoms and they go, looks like autoimmune to me. And let's give you some anti-inflammatories. So you take some steroids or this or that. Um, Mold has releases mycotoxins in the body, and those mycotoxins create an inflammatory response all through the body, and they call it chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And when I went to the last time I went to a primary care physician was in 2018, and I asked to have my C-reactive protein tested as part of my general blood work, my annual checkup. And he said, no. And I was like, why wouldn't you test it? I've had it tested before. Why wouldn't you test it? And he said, we can't do anything about inflammation. So why even look? This is standard care. And so that was the last time I saw a primary care physician. And I've had only bad experiences with doctors since. That aside, the idea that inflammation can't be addressed is wrong. The idea that we shouldn't look at a person's environment to understand why they're sick is wrong. Um, Even the continuing medical education programs, where doctors have to get 50 credits every 2 years of continuing education in order to keep their licenses active. And even though cannot, you cannot have any marketing involved in any of that at all, it's basically all funded by pharma. And I've been turned down 3 times for creating a course because longevity is in the name. The medical establishment doesn't support longevity. It's only symptom and treatment, symptom and treatment. And this is exactly what I experienced when I was sick. So, what had happened, it was when I got sick, it was during COVID, but I was running large Comic Cons, events with 50,000 people in a weekend, and I was the person running the ops. I did all the ops ahead of time. I did all the ops at the event. I had a team, but I was responsible for every minute little detail of how it went. And I could hold a lot of things in my head at once. And then so stress hits, COVID hits, we refund $400,000 in tickets and have to remake the business or we're going under. And so we did. We took it virtual. And then we were able to quadruple the revenue by going virtual. And so by September of 2020, I had rebuilt the platform on which we operated. And then I was so proud of myself. I was also exhausted. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a little break. I'm going to let my brain rest. I'm going to do a Karate Kid move here and I'm going to paint an area just to do something that so I feel productive, but I cannot look at a screen. So I did that, thought everything was fine. 2 weeks later, my brain didn't work. And I didn't know they were related. So 2 weeks later, I couldn't run reports on the system I myself built in the month prior. And I was desperate. So in those 2 weeks, it was kind of a gradual onset, first of depression and then deep fatigue. And then I couldn't read a spreadsheet. And I think I was lucky in that my the paint fumes likely took the mold straight to my brain and knocked out my most valued possession in my body, in my opinion, at the time. So had it happened like it happens with most people, a gradual exposure over time, my cells would have worn down, I might have gained some weight, I would have felt lethargic, and then eventually some brain fog, and we would have had no idea what happened to me. There would have been no way to figure it out. But it went straight to my brain, and I went to screeching halt. So I saw a neurologist almost immediately. So from that 2 week point, it was another 2 weeks before I got into the neurologist, and then I had a brain scan done. I rejected the notion that I was depressed because the other symptoms came on so fast, like the confusion. I mean, I was down on myself for that. But depression as a label only came up because my brain, all of our brains want to give a quick answer and move on. And so it was like, yep, we've seen this before. That's depression. And I was like, no, that can't be it. And so I went further and I had my brain scan, but the doctor didn't know how the scan was done because he sent me to a clinic. And turns out they just did it wrong. My eyes were closed. I was meditating. They injected the tracer. It looked like I had a traumatic brain injury where I had hit the front and back of my head, but I hadn't hit my head. So he diagnosed me as having a TBI, thinking I must not remember because the brain scan couldn't lie, ignoring that it could have been done improperly. And so then he recommended hyperbaric oxygen therapy, neurofeedback, and a drug called nimodipine. And nimodipine is really only given to stroke victims. And he said, this is what I use. It opens the blood vessels in the brain. It helps you get the oxygen where it needs to go. And that will help you get better. You have to take the drug. And I didn't want to do something that would do something so dramatic to my brain. And I was nervous. So I was waiting before I filled the prescription. And I went to the hyperbaric clinic, and that doctor said, he asked me, what's been recommended to you to heal your brain? I told him, and he goes, oh, Dr. So and so. And I was like, how do
I'm
you
sorry.
know that? And he said, well, he's the only one that recommends that drug. That was it. I wasn't going to take it. So then my ex-husband, who I was married to at the time, took me back to the doctor. They sat me down and they impressed upon me how important it was that I get better and that I had to follow doctor's orders. And I said no. And that was my first no. And then I was floundering. I got progressively sicker, more tired, more exhausted, less able to do regular things. I wasn't recovering function of my brain. And my home was getting more and more moldy. So 2 months later, I found it in my air vents. And then it was only because I was reading. It wasn't that I could process and retain the information so much, but I was reading. My intellect was still there, and I could take notes and I could ask questions. So everything was present for me. Everything was in the moment, but I wouldn't really remember what I did the day before because I was that analytical movement through time part of the brain was just not operating like it should. But Dave Asprey mentioned he had the same brain scan. He had a slide that looked like toxic exposure. I remembered mine had that same, and I didn't understand why. And he said it was mold. I was like, oh, I'll test for mold because I tested for everything. And finally, I got that answer and I was able to start healing. I had two more doctors steer me in the wrong direction on the path. One of them charged me $13,000 up front because I was desperate and everyone had failed me. He just knew. He knew what happens with mold patients, that either you give them a little bit and they get better fast, so you better get all your money right away. Or there's a thing called mold rage where they're so combative, you can't work with them. And so he was dealing with both in my case. I definitely had mold rage, and I was pissed at him because he couldn't read and interpret the test that he prescribed for me. So he did a genetic test and never told me if I had the allele APOE4, if I had the fourth allele that would make it difficult for me to clear the mold. He never told me. I still don't know. It's been 4 years, 5 years. I still don't know. I can't read the test, and neither could he. So I got to give myself a little slack that I can't read it. But he prescribed things he didn't know how to deal with. And I had to learn how to be my own advocate and find my way through. And when I look back at what I did and how I actually got better, I recognized it was little things like morning and evening exposure to sunlight, walking my dog a quarter mile 5 times a day, sitting in front of a gong and having sound waves shake mold out of my brain. Maybe it doesn't exactly work like that, but it must. I can feel it go through my bones, like it must be moving the lymphatic system. And so I was doing these gentle things, and eventually I felt better. I felt like I could put on a Thanksgiving dinner, coordinate a bunch of tasks at the same time, and deliver it at a point in time. Like that's a complicated, hard task for people to do who don't have sequencing. And yeah, in the wake of that, I shifted. I got divorced. And so I was no longer running Comic Cons because that was his thing. And he said, well, what am I going to do? Why don't I take what I know about running events and apply it to something that can help other people who might be suffering and don't know why. And so that's what I do.
I didn't want to stop you because there's so much there, but I just want to jump in. There's so much I have to ask. Well, first of all, I mean, I'm sure someone watching or listening right now, I mean, to this part of the story that you were given about your experience with doctors and just the system as a whole. And even you trying to publish things which or put in a course together that you couldn't because of key terms. I mean, that's like a big eye opener. I mean, like I joke, my eyes are big and they get bigger when I hear these things. And frankly, you know, it's rightfully to do that. I mean, because so you and I we talked again before, I've been in the healthcare, and one of the reasons we're here today is because I felt there's a need to have a health radio, health channel that kind of brings, some expertise that may not be convoluted or steered one way or the other. It's raw, it's generic, it's really the real thing from people who know it, maybe not because they have a bias or some sort of a financial gain out of it, right? Because technically healthcare system is a profitable industry, and so is pharma and so on and so forth. And again, and I'm not going to knock any of that because I mean some part of that works, but there is a root thing, which root word is root cause,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that comes over and over in various discussions, and all the people out there that are talking about health and being healthy and longevity and all the stuff. The concept is that we treat symptoms, as you said. That's really the kind of routine. We diagnose you, and here's the masking.
Mhm.
Symptoms are covered, you feel good, but the damage is still within. I mean, we hear this about cancer, we hear this about parasite, we hear this about all kind of stuff. We had this about COVID. I mean, I can tell you the story. During COVID time, we had a couple of shows that talked a little bit about, the stuff that was not promoted.
Mhm.
And 2 years later, actually, the show got hit by YouTube, and we got canceled out of YouTube for 2 years because
Wow.
the shows did not meet the guidelines. So I can tell you, I understand the system, and I understand the need for the system and how the healthcare works. How and by the way, I won't generalize because there are some doctors that are on the opposite spectrum. I mean, literally, it's a full spectrum on
Mhm.
where people are and what they do. There's a lot of doctors I've interviewed and I met with who are literally on the bio side, and they like the new stuff. They like to treat the cause, and they're not really. I mean, they in it. I mean, obviously, they're in it for the mission, not so much the money. And and I get the system has been corrupted over over years because it just became, the cost of education just to go to med school and stuff became difficult. The curriculum is also kind of, little, finagled, if you want to call it that way. And if someone can like, trash us today on the on comments, like, but it is a fact, I mean, I don't have to say it, people are saying this all the time. I try to be as politically neutral. But at the end of the day, these are facts that are available to people. You can't hide them anymore, especially with social media. A lot of people know about these things, right?
Mhm.
But the idea is that, I mean, this is a fact that the curriculum apparently in med school is developed by some of the pharma, as you said. They control some of that. I mean, they're powerful, and we understand that. I mean, I get what it is, and frankly, yeah, it's all about pills, more pills, more pills, more pills, more treatment, with pills, more
Mhm.
testing, more stuff. And so that brings me to the
Yeah.
other stuff. I mean, you went to get tested, but they would not test you for the real stuff. And by the way, that came up in a few discussions I've had with some experts and scientists, that there are tests that need to be done with markers that are not your standard tests. I mean, the stuff that they do in the regular lab work that you do in your physical is like the baby stuff, not the heavy stuff, not the deep dive look into your blood and your genetics and genome and all the other stuff. Your tell what is it? Tell I can't get the technical
Telomeres.
word.
Mhm.
Telomeres. There you go. The telomeres and all this stuff. I mean, there's there's
Yeah.
there's all kind of stuff that goes. I mean, that's like the extreme stuff, right? But you don't have that. But there are. I mean, I've had just a show recently about longevity, and again, we talked about how they do a specific test, 260 markers, whatever, to find some of the stuff, and then they
Mhm.
design supplements that are specifically for you as an individual, and that stuff. Now, these things are not very familiar with the public, and for most of us that do not track these things, or you know they may not even know. I mean, the standard person will just, I get my physical every year, which is, by the way, I'm still for those. Get your physicals, check your stuff, be preventative, in your approach to things. Don't wait, but also be aware, learn.
Mhm.
You said it yourself. I mean, you went few times, multiple doctors. And well, it's funny that you said you went to a particular location to check out your stuff, and they told you who prescribed the medicine. this particular doctor. So this is I'm going to throw in a story that may be very similar to this. My
Mm.
wife was pregnant with our daughter, and we went to an OB/GYN doctor. Obviously, you need to, she needs to get started. And as soon as she went in, like literally month one, oh, we're gonna have a C-section.
Oh
That
my.
was that was it. So now we had a friend who
Oh,
made
well, that
sure
was in
made,
the States, right? That doesn't
well,
happen overseas.
this is in the States, yeah. So that was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so we went to this doctor. The same thing. That's the first thing he said. Oh, it's a C-section. You can't deliver. It doesn't look good, and so okay. So now we go to a friend of ours, and she's like, "Which doctor do you go to?" This doctor is like, "Oh, that's 100% of his patients are C-sections." Now later on, I mean, this was when I was still not as aware, and I found out that because the money was better when you do C-sections as opposed to regular birth, and that's it. So we switched doctors, and she had a very normal delivery. The first one and the second one, no problems. There were no
Mm.
C-sections. Had we not actually, had someone to guide us and give us that information, we would have stuff. So this is actually almost related to the idea that, you get a prescription, you might not, you want to ask people, is this the right one? I mean, I try to avoid
Right.
medications as much as I can personally. And I'll give you a good one. I mean, my mom passed a couple of months back, and I believe personally that I don't believe, I was told by the in the hospital that she got a bad reaction to heparin, and they overdosed her with some stuff. Now, obviously, with her age and stuff, there's no legal ramification to it. But the fact of the matter, the damage was done because she was overdosed in a clinical aspect of things, and there was nothing you can do about it. We just watched her kind of go in happy with a smile, with a little bit of a
Oh,
condition that we thought it was be curable. She walked in the ER, she never came out. Simple.
wow.
The one time that actually she didn't go on an ambulance, we were joking about it. And that's the one time she came out, in a box. And literally, I'm sad that I'm laughing about this stuff. But just to give you like the medicine, I'm in a point in my life now where I've seen the damage. I mean, it killed her kidneys, and there's nothing we can do. Tried dialysis, didn't work, and of course, she was older with diabetes and some other stuff. So her body didn't do it, and but I do know that had she not been on that heparin, she could have stayed without the heparin, or maybe they have different levels of
Mm.
anticoagulant, because they said she had a little clot in her foot. I mean, obviously, that was there
Mm.
a risk for that? Yeah. Can it do stuff? Yes. But could it
Mm.
have been treated differently? But because they had to test the heparin levels, and in a couple of days, just when we thought then everything else went haywire, and the rest is history. So I can, and this is my close
Mm.
experience, more recent experience with stuff like that. But these stories, we see them, we hear them over and over in all over the world. I mean, I've had multiple shows that we discuss. I've had someone one time who was misdiagnosed for 3 years,
Mm.
and going through courses of treatments and stuff, and she turned out to have nothing from what was prescribed, and it's crazy. And when you hear these stories, it drives me nuts. And I know people are watching or listening and be like, what's going on in this world. But that's
Well,
it. I mean, this when you
can
put,
we talk about how
yeah,
they,
yeah,
and I
please.
don't blame the doctors so much because they're restricted by what's allowed by the insurance, or they have to get off the insurance
Oh,
teat,
you go to my
right?
word now.
Right.
Go ahead.
So they're restricted, but in that restriction, the basic blood panel that tests for glucose fasted glucose levels and A1C to get the average, that, in my view, to only test those two is causing the diabetes epidemic, not just missing it, causing it. Because what they do not routinely test for, and you can get it from Function Health and some other expanded resources that have 160 biomarkers, what they're not testing for is fasted insulin. And so they're causing this ramp up in our society of diabetes because what's happening is that as the glucose hovers in the 90s for a decade, it's hovering there because the insulin's rising. And so the body is a miracle. The body's like, I can't go over 100 or I'm going to get sick. So I'm going to keep pumping more insulin every single day, and my insulin levels will rise while my glucose stays the same and just under the danger zone. But that rising insulin production over time in that decade that you think you're fine and your doctor says, you might be a little pre-diabetic, that pre-diabetic phase, overnight, when your body says, what the hell? Because your insulin levels are up here, then you can't shift gears fast enough. And it's happening over a decade in our lives, if not more. And then what do we do? And cortisol is the same way. And so if you are a really stressed person, you're just pumping cortisol all day long. And like you're getting outraged at the news, at your phone, at your boss, at your spouse, at your kids, outrage everywhere. We live in an outrage society. And then it's like, boom, more cortisol, boom, more cortisol. Bellies get bigger, 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 bigger. Boom, more cortisol. And then the body goes, F you, boom. And then suddenly it's just exhaustion. And the body says, I just can't do it anymore. Because it's like, I'm trying, I'm trying. That's not really a tiger. You know, that's not a tiger. You could just let that shit go. But and then it finally just says, I'm not playing the game anymore. There's no tiger. I'm not going to give you the cortisol you need. And then we're beat. We're in a state of burnout. So the body will keep trying and keep trying and keep trying until it's overwhelmed because we don't let up the assault, whether it's sugar or stress. Those are probably the two biggest culprits in our lives for damaging our own bodies. And not testing for that insulin level. How much insulin is my body producing to keep me below 100? That's actively harming people's bodies as we speak.
Thank you for injecting that in the discussion because that is a big deal. And you're right. I mean, it's funny because you talked about you running big events and you just got shut down literally after a while of getting all the stuff going because you had obviously COVID was very stressful times, and a lot of people in business got hit, and I mean very similar to the current situation with war now, right? You know, we have
Yeah.
people that are really very much stressed with stuff that's going on. It impacts business, it impacts everything, finances,
Yeah.
economics. So all that stuff does that gives you a hit, and then certainly your stress levels, cortisols go up, and that's it. Your hormones gets also messed up. Everything gets uh, out of whack, as I would say,
Mhm.
and the rest is history. Because then your body is not doing good. You feel the lazy, you feel the tired, you're depressed, you
Mhm.
have all the bad. Can't wake up, you can't stand, you can't do stuff. And by the way, this is real, folks. I mean, and
Mhm.
obviously there's the other factor now that we haven't even talked about, but you said it. I mean, you said glucose. Well, we get a lot of carbs. Food is really not healthy these days, and so I mean, it's a multitude of things that actually make it stuff. We started the discussion with mold. I mean, it's in your house. You found it in your
Mhm.
air ducts. I mean, that means you're breathing
Mhm.
that stuff.
Mhm.
It's especially in the U.S. We have these air ducts all over the place, and
Mhm.
if that stuff grows in there, you just put your AC on if you're in a hot place, or if you're in a cold place, you put in the heat. Either way, the stuff is in the air and it's getting in your lungs and in your bloodstream, and it starts doing the damage. And slowly but surely, we have this. So a combination of all these things is just a disaster that's waiting to happen, and it's happening. I think to your point that Sandy, there's more people that are probably under this exposure without them even knowing. that
Mhm.
is that is probably going to be alarming if people start doing their testing. So the question to you, Sandy, now, you've done this some of the work and you do the work. Is there a particular list of test or place because I think you can test
Mhm.
yourself outside of doctors, right? You can do this on you go to a lab, you pay for it, whatever. And there are some organizations in places that are biohacking,
Yep.
specialties that can do that for you without having to go to the generic route. So let's talk about that just as a solution, because at the end of the day, that's what you did. You kind of went your own way to cure yourself in a way. I mean, at the end of the day, that's how it sounds like. That's what you did. From
I
what I read, that's what you did.
Yeah, I did have to go to a doctor to get the mold test because Florida won't allow me to buy it myself.
Okay.
And
That's a
so,
good
and
one.
neither would Kentucky. There are 14 states that won't let you purchase a mold test and take it on your own. It's just a urine test. There are lots of home urine tests, but they won't let you do this on your own in 14 states. And that's probably because of the insurance lobby, because they don't want people to realize that mold is a cause. And that would be more the construction lobby or the whoever governs condos, because condos in Florida could be liable in situations where something's not remedied in time. And so there's a lot of liability in stake and a lot of interests in keeping the knowledge away from people. And so 14 states don't allow it. Interestingly enough, in New York and New Jersey, you can't get Function Health without a telehealth appointment at the very minimum. For self-diagnosis, you have to have a clinician involved in order to get these tests. So I think it costs about $300 more in New York and New Jersey to do those biomarker panels on your own. And so there are still some obstacles to being able to do this yourself. But yes, and it's not always a great idea to do your own home testing. I had it suggested to me that perhaps I had arsenic poisoning. That's how sick I was. And a friend of mine who had gone to medical school but didn't fully become a doctor, he was kind of guiding me through how to interpret my symptoms and what was going on. And he said, "Well, we've had some construction in the office, and that wood is soaked in arsenic, and so that sawdust, you could have breathed it in, and you might have arsenic poisoning." Okay, so I took a heavy metals test from Everlywell at home. Everlywell did nothing wrong, but the lab they used, I don't know who the lab was. The lab technician called me on the phone and said, "I'm not supposed to call you, but you have so much arsenic in your body, you might just die." And I was like, "What?" And
Oh
so
my God.
that's the nocebo effect. We've all heard of the placebo effect, where you take a sugar pill and you think it's the medicine and you get better because you think you're going to get better. Well, when you think you're going to die, you can actually die. And it took me a month to recover from the stress of that phone call because my body shut down. I thought I was going to die. She made me believe I was about to die.
Oh my.
And my ex-husband is great in a crisis, and he got an executive from Everlywell on the phone. They got my results to me within a few hours because I couldn't get treated locally to remove the arsenic unless we had Everlywell saying that I had arsenic. So they rushed the results. I took it to a place called Liquivita, and then they were great. They did a blood draw before they gave me chelation therapy. And so I started chelation therapy. I did that twice while waiting on the results from the blood draw. Turns out I didn't have arsenic in my blood. I had eaten a crab cake 36 hours before the test. I had taken activated charcoal the night before, which caused me to excrete more of it in my urine. It has a natural arsenic. I don't understand what natural arsenic is. They say it's non-toxic. I've eaten maybe 2 crab cakes since, but it wasn't going to kill me. But there was so much arsenic in my urine from that combination that it looked like I could die. And so you can't always go it alone either. It's really hard to know what to do. It's really hard to know who to trust. It's weird to question a doctor. I'm no expert, but each step along the way, I had to do a gut check against my own sensibility for what I needed. And it didn't always work well, but fighting through that battle and creating a couple of events, I ran Biohacker Expo in Miami for 2 years, showed me that people don't have a framework for how to begin. And so that's why I came up with EDGE: eliminate, decode, gain, and execute in that order. So our society is pushing the optimization, the gain and advantage, that piece of it comes third. We have to take a hard look at ourselves and see what damage we're doing to ourselves. You can't you can't take a vitamin to make up for eating at McDonald's. Doesn't work like that. And so we have to get real with ourselves. And then once we are willing to put forth the effort to stop attacking ourselves and to set boundaries so other people or other systems don't attack our bodies, then we can move forward with real biohacking, real optimization.
And yeah, I'm listening to you. It's crazy. I mean, you just said about the states where you're not even allowed to do certain things, right? Now, and I get it. I mean, there's rules about everything, and I'm not against rules. Actually, I like good policy. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just that this is your health that when you need to have access, sometimes you need to have access, but you get through this bureaucracy or this red tape and these limitations makes it very difficult. Not everybody can travel to the other states and find themselves a lab that's willing to do stuff. Although now, I mean, like I said, I mean, I've had multiple shows about specific tests, and also on social media there's a couple of guys that talk about some specific I guess blood markers that you have to do, and there's you know, and they're available publicly. Depends, like I guess to your point, depends what state, but you can. They give you the locations where you can do it, or you can ship your stuff to them, whatever. But I mean, it's becoming a lot more available, because we have the jurisdiction, or at least we have different opportunities. It makes a difference. Also, you mentioned something that is again a couple of times about insurance. Now, being in the insurance space myself, I can tell you this. Depends what. No defending the insurance space here, but I've had problems myself internally when we're trying to do benefits and stuff and design
Mhm.
stuff because here's what it comes down to, and it's a sad to say it. It comes down to funding, right? It's a money thing, right? You have to
Mhm.
your any business is meant to make profit, right? Even those that are not for profit, they make a surplus, right? And so at the end of the day, you have so much revenue, you have so much, I guess expenses, overhead. You got to figure out how it's done. If it is a public or commercial insurance where you have shareholders and things like that, like the big guys, and you have the local plans that are working. Let's say in my word is government programs, so we're subsidized by CMS. So you only get a certain amount of dollars per month, and in the last 20 years, that amount's been decreasingly, and on a decline, and therefore what you see is that you get in, like for example, you were just a number. We were getting, let's say, 1,000, per member per month. Now you're getting 600 per member per month. So how much can you possibly provide within that? Then you have all these measures, authorizations, and stuff like that. Then you have the doctors who prescribe more because they're not getting paid enough, and so because the insurance is paying them less. So all these factors are really driven by the finances of the business aspect of things, and then it adds up to the lobby because everybody's got to have to survive as industries, and so they do that. So I understand the logics behind it, and the sad part is that unfortunately people actually die, and people get sick, and people don't get the services that they need, or they get limitation. I mean, people that don't have insurance, they can't even afford insulin. I mean, it's very
Right.
expensive. I mean, a vial is like $300, to get a brand. Now there is a generic that you can get at Walmart for $24 or $25, but and by the way, it does the same job. But even that, someone that needs 2, 3 bottles of those a month may not be able to afford them if they don't have the means to. So it's a very difficult place to be in the States. But I think it's also, even though we sometimes we compare our healthcare system to overseas, Europe and other places, and they might be a little bit more of a social system, so there's access. But at the end of the day, I don't know if there's a perfect system out there. I have not seen one yet when it comes to healthcare or insurance. Uh, as long as the mix profits with stuff, you're always going to have a problem and limitations to, unless you have a lot of money, then you have no problems. And I would say also, if you have very little money, I think you're also good because then you can access those benefits that are government program get benefits.
Mhm.
And sometimes those things are perfectly covering everything. You can get everything under Medicaid for some in some states, right? I mean, almost everything. So you don't have to pay
Well,
anything.
well, the
Yeah.
irony is that when you stop harming your body, it costs nothing. Costs nothing to anyone. And why don't the doctors recommend do no harm to yourself? Please stop harming yourself, right? Like they have a
Well,
do no harm vow, but what about me?
Sandy, it's funny because technically it makes sense even from an insurance aspect. I mean, this is a debate I've had myself many times in round tables. Well, for example, we in the Medicare space, we encourage gym memberships. So
Mhm.
we add a benefit for gym. The idea is very simple. If our seniors are actually active and they're healthy, well, they're not going to be obese, they're not going to have diabetes, they're not going to have blood pressure, and therefore we're going to spend less on them. So we can, it's worth investing in their health to get stuff. And so you have a lot of these programs like smoking cessation and other things that some of the plans are doing. Even now they have food, nutrient, nutritious and stuff that's involved in that to make sure that people are staying healthy. But not all the programs out there, like especially commercial insurance doesn't have that, right?
Mhm.
Unless you buy the biggest product and package that you can get, which again, very expensive. Even
Mhm.
companies can't afford these things. So the problem is it's less costly to actually be healthy.
Mhm.
Here's the problem. You mentioned the drug companies and the pharma.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
hello, if we have cure and we have healthy people, we're out of business, right? So again, that's another thing, right? So again, politics make it very difficult. So it's like a sea that with waves that you have to navigate and you have to kind of be between those waves and be safe. You have to try to manage it, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
But you're right, the only way to do it is for everyone watching and listening out there to spread the message that it starts with you, your behavior, try to eat natural, try to do the right thing, try to exercise, the stuff that we tell people all the time. Eat well, detox, avoid the crap, which is the caffeinated stuff and, refined sugar and, all the stuff. And if you did it right, it should be good. As to your
And
point, it starts
and
with,
maybe exercise isn't what we think it is. Maybe exercise is in the kitchen while I'm waiting for my coffee to brew. Maybe I just bounce. Little
bouncing is actually
bounce.
coming up. Bouncing is a big deal. People don't
Yeah.
even know
I
about
don't
that. It's,
I don't
it's
have to lift my feet off the ground. Like I'm not lifting my butt off the chair and I'm still bouncing. And
lymph
that's
nodes.
moving the that's helping my body to detox because it's moving the lymphatic fluid through my body. That's the way waste is removed outside of the gut. That's the only way waste is removed. And it's pulled out through movement. If we sit on the couch all day, we're telling our bodies, prepare to die. We have to move somehow a little bit. We don't have to go for a jog. We don't have to lift weights, but we have to move our bodies. Otherwise, our bodies think we're preparing for death. And it's simple and it doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be no pain, no gain. It's not what we think it is. You don't have to get on the floor and do sit ups. Maybe in your chair, tighten your belly, relax it. Tighten your belly, relax it. We just have to tell our muscles they're required. I need you. I need you to stay working. Just telling our body.
Communicate.
Yeah.
Well,
Simple.
Sandy, thank you for highlighting that because again, uh, so I do also fitness talks and stuff. Yeah, there's fitness for those that are willing to do it. I mean, certainly there are discussions about building muscles, but I love what you said because movement. Whenever we do the show, we come back to the conclusion. It's not so much what you do is movement, whatever that
Mhm.
means. And I love what you said, the bouncing. I mean, now there's a lot of discussion about just bouncing the lymph nodes, what they
Mhm.
have to drain basically. So you bounce or you get a little one of those trampolines, whatever,
Mhm.
get a little jumps in the morning, first thing in the morning, whatever, a couple of times you bring that stuff. And these are things that, to your point, you don't have to have equipment. You can push the wall, you can push the ground. I mean, push-ups
Mhm.
is the the longest exercise that's always been on the planet. I think everybody knew how to push the ground, at a point or another. But
Yeah.
stuff like that works. I mean, you can just cycle while you sit on. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there are actually people that do aerobics on chairs, and things
Mhm.
like that because they can have a lot of movement and it works. You, but that's the thing. Like so, basic nutrition, basic movement, basic changes of lifestyle can make a difference and
Mhm.
prevent getting into the stuff. Now obviously, now in your case, mold, I mean, how did it get there? Those could be other problems. I mean, it's not like we go buy mold. Hey, listen, I'm gonna give me a pound of mold and spread it in the house. That stuff develops through a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. Now I can tell you, for example, in the
Yeah.
States, we know this. We have sheetrock. It gets wet, that stuff happens.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. I mean, water leak in the pipe can start
Mhm.
doing the stuff in the damage. You don't even see it, you know.
Yeah.
So stuff, these are things sometimes we can't avoid. But if we do everything else on our side, your body will be better prepared. Now, like the example, for example, we said about insulin resistance, and just like in the body's just wearing out a lot of that stuff, and eventually everybody says, okay, I give up. Let's just call it
Right.
what it is. And now, so all these things, and now we have dementia, we have all these things also that they claim now. I think dementia is what the diabetes type 3, whatever
Hmm.
the new definition of it.
Right.
It's crazy. Now, now you say healing starts with really removing things, right?
It
So
starts
so
with what you stop, is what I believe.
yeah. So
Stop the
let's
assault. And one of the assaults I believe is sitting.
okay.
So, so I think that sedentary behavior is something that has to stop. I'm not like pro go be an athlete, but stop sitting. Like do more. Just simple. When I got when I started to heal, my form of exercise was to lie in bed and tense all the muscles of my body and then relax. I was lying down, tense it all up and relax because the mitochondria in our muscles, if you don't clench your muscles, they don't get a signal to make more. And they're producing all the energy our body needs to get through the day. If you don't have enough energy to get through the day, it starts because your mitochondria, they're supposed to trade 2 ATP for 36 ATP. That's their job. But when they're not getting the signal that they're required, they trade 2 for 2 and you're stagnant. And that's where I was. And the only way to tell them you have to you have to detox if there's something blocking their signal, like I had the mold blocking the signal, or it could just be disuse. They have to be told you got to go to work. And they only go to work when they're told to go to work. They don't just we don't just thrive without a signal that capacity is needed. They don't build reserves unless they think we might use them later. This is the natural intelligence of the body. What I think is so fascinating about this world with AI, which I love, I build so many applications with AI. Um, the limitation of AI is that it only has what's ever been written right now. Maybe that will change, but right now, all of the amazing AIs in the world are built entirely on what has been put into language. And our bodies have billions of years of code running through them that has never been put into language. The way the body heals, the way it reacts to the environment is is before anything we can be aware of and describe. It's beyond the capacity to measure and interpret. We're still coming out with studies, learning how ion channels work, learning how mitochondria works, learning how inflammation is caused or cleared. We're still discovering all of that. And until it's all encoded into words, the body is still the smartest thing on the planet on its own. Get out of its way.
If the more we actually look at the body and the functions of the body, the more we get amazed. I mean, I mean, a good example when I mentioned, my mom's kidneys shut down. I mean, these little things are small. They're tiny little pieces of mesh, flesh, whatever you want to call it, some tissue type of, organ. Yet the function it operates. I mean, diabetes, you got a pancreas, that actually generates the insulin and it knows when to regulate. Now we have pumps and you have to measure stuff, just to meet, what it does naturally. So the cells, all these things, we start thinking about them like really, but I think the new the new age, if you want to call it that way, we've kind of forgotten, how to operate as humans, and we have
Mm-hmm.
these new lifestyles that we actually do. We talked about stress. That's I think the biggest killer today. I mean, stress is like probably half of the problem that we have, besides the other stuff, the nutrition and maybe lack of movement. And again, even the system has been constructed where these are almost meant to happen. I mean, even work. I mean, we did a show. That's why you and I we talked about like how we went from health to business stuff because business is, you look at you, you were in business, you got so stressed, it affected you. What happens to every one of us? You lose a job, you're stressed. You're at work, you're stressed. We were talking about command and control, old school leadership versus, empathy, leadership. That was another problem. People, and I still see that happening where people are like living in, I don't know what age, in terms of like how they operate in a company. And, if you don't do this, everybody's threatened to be fired and stuff like that. I mean, I get the job has to be done, but there's a way to do things. I mean, we overstress ourselves and stress. And to be honest with you, folks, I mean, this is Sandy. This is something I've learned. I mean, I at my age right now, it's not worth it.
Mhm.
It is not worth it, folks. I mean, I don't care how who you work for, what you work for. It doesn't matter because you can make millions, but if your health leaves you, it's over.
Yeah.
You'll just spend them, whatever you made on just, hopefully you get a cure, but yeah, maybe not a cure, so it's not worth it. Sometimes living simple can be better, stressing for the business, even if it's your company, like we make a joke, like you work for companies, you make millions for these companies, right? I mean, you generate, part of what you do, for example, but one day you leave the company either by volunteering or by design. They'll let you be, right? So either way, you've given all the time that you put. Listen, I mean, I've been corporate for 30 plus years. I've lived, through multiple companies, which means most of them I left on my own terms. But at the end of the day, uh, sometimes it didn't work and, we had to part, it was a decision, okay, bye bye, sayonara. But at the end of the day, like you put all that work, you stress yourself and it does affect your relationship. It does affect your body. You eat too much, you're cranky. It affects how you operate with your kids, you stress your family. And so that then it becomes food, then becomes health, and then the rest is stuff. You're not sleeping properly. All the bad things can happen from that same thing. Your cortisol, by the way, I love what you said about the movement because anyone who experiences movement gets a dopamine hit, they get happy, and they get a kick, and they become very alive. It's
Hmm.
amazing.
Hmm.
If you just stay on the couch and just kind of like, scroll on channels or on your screen, now that's worse. I mean, now we're behind these screens that you can spend 3 hours before, it's like zombies, like you're hypnotized and, oh, wow, it's 3 o'clock. How the hell did they go by this fast? We have all these problems, but I love what you said. Like, you got to remove things, that are impacting you. So what are some of the mistakes people actually are
Mm.
really making today, that we can
Yeah.
guide them easily to kind of move that stuff and start fresh. Because I think every day we can start and the body is resilient enough to reset. Even if I
Sometimes
don't think, yeah,
sometimes I go easy on listeners, but I feel like your audience has heard a lot of advice, so I'm going to give some hard ones.
okay,
Um,
please.
Plastic. Plastic is very dangerous for our health, and it
What about it?
matters the temperature. So if if it's a hard plastic and it's refrigerated, it's not as bad. But if you have a room temperature plastic, or if you want to defrost something in plastic, or you want to get takeout and it shows up in plastic, the black plastic is made from recycled electronics and it has flame retardants in it too. And so there's a compound called a phthalate that makes the plastic flexible. But phthalates aren't just in plastics, they're also in fragrances. And I don't understand the molecular nature of this phthalate. That is beyond me. But what I do know is that when they test these things for their safety, if they are testing them, because they don't test every chemical compound that we're exposed to. But when they do test, they're only testing, does a little dose kill you? Nope. Okay, we're good. But what's happening is that the phthalates in the plastic and the microplastics themselves, and the phthalates in the fragrances, your soaps, your detergents, your air fresheners, your household cleaners, it's everywhere. these are causing hormone disruptions in the body. They have an estrogenic effect, and so they're limiting fertility. Young boys have the testosterone levels at 18. I should say young men. 18-year-old men have the same testosterone levels that 50-year-old men had in the 50s and 60s. The environmental exposure is changing the nature of how we move through our day in the tiniest little ways, the hormonal ways. And when our hormones shift, our stress response shifts. And then our weight management shifts. And then our fertility shifts. And it's all interconnected. And so it's really easy to say, eat less sugar, drink less alcohol. It's a lot harder to say, don't heat up something in plastic in the microwave. Don't store your leftovers in plastic. Don't use Ziploc bags. Well, what do I use? Well, I buy silicone bags off of Amazon. I have about 10 of them and I cycle through them. They can go through the dishwasher. It's not as bad as plastic. And a friend of mine called me because her daughter was diagnosed as having a difficult time with her liver. It's just working harder than it needed to. And she knows that I like to think through these things and help figure out where something could be coming from. And I asked her a bunch of questions. And one of them was, teenage girls like to smell nice. Does she have a new perfume or air freshener? And she got back to me a half hour later and she sent me a link and she said, could this be toxic? And it said, well, there's no indication that it's not. And if it did not have phthalates in it, they would certainly advertise that it didn't. And I said, it looks like it's probably releasing a bunch of chemicals into her environment. And so they removed it. But Axe body spray on a tween boy, that's going to affect how his testosterone develops and how he goes through puberty. It's not good. And don't even get me started on fluoride as a neurotoxin in the toothpaste and the mouthwash.
Water.
Yeah, in the water. Yeah. So there are just so many threats. And it's hard to give up plastic. So, but I feel like your audience is ready for a hard challenge or they wouldn't be listening to you. So they're in it. So that's my advice today is let go of some plastic in your life.
Well, thank you, Sandy. By the way, the stuff that you mentioned is everyday use. It's very high promo. I mean, we can add, makeup stuff. I mean, for ladies, I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Toxic.
I post everything every day. I see some post about something, I repost it, I put it on my stories because I just want people to just be aware. And listen, I mean, what people do with the information, it's on them. But at the end of the day, at least, if you see something long enough, it's the same thing as the marketing power, right? You see it, you buy it. Well, if you see some bad news, you probably at least you're going to question it, and eventually it's going to, click in somehow, and you'll be like, "Oops, maybe this is the problem. Let me remove this out of my life." And even reduce. Let's say not remove 100%, because I mean we're
Yeah.
so used to stuff. But if we start reducing some of the use, to your point, I mean, here's the thing. The funny part is you can buy plastic for so cheap. Now you go to buy a copper, you know, cup or mug or something. It's
Hmm.
expensive.
Yeah.
It's like almost like by default you're not supposed to actually use the healthy stuff because they make it so out of reach. Where the easy stuff is the one that's destroying you. I mean, pottery stuff, was always what our ancestors and until more recent, that's what people use. And you
Yeah.
cook in, ceramic pot, I mean, steel, all the stuff. I mean, it's funny. We had a discussion one time in one of the shows, one of the experts. And he's like, you can get some iron just from cast iron, skillet, whatever. I mean, you put this, you just get some iron in the blood. At least you get in the real stuff that you need for your blood. It's stuff, but who knows, right? I mean, unless we
Hmm.
we we are educated, and this is not education we get in school. That's
Mm-mm.
definite. It's not in the curriculum. I don't think if, unless you go to biology, maybe. And to your point, even, I mean, doctors, they go to med school, they learn, but then because of the practice, because of the business aspect of things can go the other way around. And so it's very difficult. So at least, these shows, they are experts. I mean, you have an expo. You do this, not it's going to be in New York, right? In July,
New York
I
in
believe.
July, the 10th and
All right.
11th.
So let's talk about that. What should people expect on that particular event, and what can they get from there? I mean, I'm sure it's going to be good for their health.
Well, the irony is that I still continue to assemble companies that are trying to push things at you, all with the understanding that I don't expect you to go in and just buy a bunch of crap. Um, and it can be crap. Everything that I would have represented in the room could be crap for you if you haven't done the work, right? Like it's beautiful and helpful and can get you to a new level of thriving if you're willing to go all the way. But you can't red light your way out of a bad diet. Like you can put red light on your gut. I do it all the time, but I also don't eat fast food or drink soda. And so my microbiome can only do so much. And yes, I can stimulate the mitochondria with light on my gut, but I'm also very careful about what I put in my gut. And so we come to the idea holistically, bring a willingness to let go of some things before you try new things and explore what's available from the devices to the supplements. Try some things out, listen to the experts. We'll have roundtable discussions so you can have small groups talk about how things work, like NAD or red light or the other things that people are really excited about in the longevity space. And then we're going to organize some dinners because when I go to these conferences, I'm always like, who's got the dinner? Who's planning dinners? Whose table can I join? What can I? So we're going to help people do that because connection is a longevity strategy. And so if we're going to live longer and better and thrive in our 80s and 90s, we got to be surrounded by people who are also thriving in their 80s or 90s so that we can still get along, right? Like I don't want a whole bunch of friends when I'm 90 who were born in the 2000s. I mean, I'm sure they're great, but it would be nice to have some 70s babies in there with me. Um, so we're going to grow old gracefully together or age defiantly, as my friend says.
Thank you, Tony. Well, first of all, thank you for breaking it down. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, these expos can have great companies. You have a lot of, advice, workshops, and things like that. You can learn about things. You can meet people who have similar interests. I mean, Comic Cons would be for everybody that loves comics, right?
Yeah,
you know, here it's everybody that wants to biohack and live a longer and prosperous life, like I would say
yeah.
the Vulcans would say. but
We're
but
the Trekkies to the superheroes. That's exactly right. Well, I had William Shatner at my first event. So
oh
we did
wow,
that.
well, there you go.
Yeah, you can see
I didn't
YouTube
know that.
videos of him on my channel where he's getting pulsed in the pulse chair. It's pretty funny.
Oh wow, that's funny. Hilarious. I didn't even see that one. But again, longevity is really a concept that no one should miss on. I mean,
Right.
granted, listen, everybody's again, I always preface, this concept that we all gonna go when it's time to go. But how you live to that point is what the difference is. Obviously, if we do the right thing and nothing is damaged, I mean, some natural causes can happen. People do have that happen to them. But we do know, statistically speaking, that now we do live a little longer in terms of medicine, what's available to us. But I actually recently have read something that actually it's almost like, while we thought we go in the right direction, I think that stuff is turning the other way around with all the nonsense that we have with the plastics and the phthalates and the pesticides and the
Mhm.
all the crazy stuff that's been discussed. I mean, we have some awareness now. I mean, even the pyramid of food has kind of inverted, which I would
Mhm.
say that's a new thing. I mean, even that. I mean, we just had a show about raw eating, like like really
Mhm.
just eating raw food, plant based. There's discussions about carnivore diets and stuff.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, folks, you can use all the modalities as long as you're in the right track or the right mindset where you want to change and live longer, not longer, but happier, healthier, and more with vitality. Like
Right.
really, like
Live
yeah,
well for longer, right? Like
that's it.
just expand that time of strength. And that's it. That's the whole
It's I just made this example the other day of, and you've probably seen this in there's a it's a reel that's going through social media where they show two people getting ready for the day. One is getting out of a hospital bed, getting help to be put on a wheelchair, and the other one is getting ready, putting their sneakers and going out, for a stroll. It's a sad, reel because you see like how people have two options in this world. They can either be one or the other, but it's on us to make that difference. And it's really, I think, everybody's duty to do it to themselves. Um, don't say that I got this. And by the way, it's a message of, I'd say, for the younger folks, because maybe you and I right now, we're kind of like in a different cloud, and we kind of learned a little bit of the world and life. And but the younger folks, they feel healthy, they have all the stuff, but you just give some crazy statistic that their fertility levels, are different. The testosterone at 18 is of someone who's in the 50s, in the 50s or 60s. That just sounds funny,
Mhm.
but that's kind of like that's a statistic that we should be aware of. I mean, if
Right.
that continues, we might not have children in a generation or two. I mean, think about that, right? It's
And
a
so
bad thing.
if your kid in late teens, early 20s is suffering from a lack of motivation, his doctor's not going to test him for testosterone, but you can push for that. If you've got a really low motivation kid, addicted to video games, not getting out, not moving, not thriving in school, there might be something biological going on. We just paint people to be lazy and like unmotivated for no reason half the time. If you've got a young person who's not thriving, there might be a biological reason. Wouldn't that be great if we could figure out what that is instead of just branding kids as not thriving? Maybe there's something else.
Wendy, I think most of the diagnoses that we hear in early ages, I think a lot of them have to do with these things. Nutrition could be one, the stuff that's in the environment could be the other. I mean, we talk about ADHD, we talk about, all these, even autism, there's some correlations, to all the stuff that's around us. And so there's quite a bit out there as information that can be helpful. I think to your
Mhm.
point also, if you can push to the doctor, and maybe the doctor may not respond, but there's always another doctor that's willing to do so. And there are doctors that are more on the biohacking environment. They're more like, naturopathic or even modern medicine, but they're just, more open-minded to, and they're learning different aspects of stuff, and they're combining some wellness practices into
Mhm.
the modern stuff. So there is that too. So it's not a, you're talking about, doing the karate kid. We're not going to paint, everybody with the same, brush. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we have a little bit of, and by the way, to each his own. Yeah, you choose your good or bad, whatever. That's up to you, folks. But at the end of the day, you know that there's options, and the more stuff. So if you are in, I would say this: if you're in the New York, Jersey, or tri-state area, you do want to check out, the actual expo, because I'm sure you're gonna get all your biohacking, uh, niches and connections, in one place. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, you want anything for any industry, you go to the expo, you find everything, right? It's a one-stop shop. You
Yes.
get everybody that's there. And that would be a
Mm,
cool
yeah.
thing. But if not, we do have your site, and people can reach out to you as well directly,
Hmm.
right, Sandy? So
Yes.
what can they expect from working with you directly if they connect it, on your website?
Well, the the tool I'm most proud of is the BioEdge decoder. So it's bioedgedecoder.com, which allows you to have a conversation about the symptoms that you're having. I call them signals, but the symptoms you're experiencing, and and chat with the AI, not to figure out what's wrong with you, but which systems of the body are involved in what you're describing so that you can recognize the natural intelligence of your body and take these signals as signposts, as directions for what to ask about or try next. And take the summary that it gives you to your doctor. It's a free tool and it's yours. It happens right on the screen. It disappears, copy and paste it. I never see it. Just get in there and talk about what's bothering you and get a fresh perspective. That's what I want people to get. Just another frame of reference. You're not stuck. You don't have to suffer. You can feel better. And I built a tool to give people an interactive way to get some fresh ideas. I don't know enough about the body to be able to address everybody's specific needs, but I built a tool that does, and using that tool can give you a fresh perspective.
By the way, that's a powerful tool because I think but although I have to say this, I mean, doctors, and I've had this experience personally when I challenged one of the providers with my mom's, at the hospital, and I started asking questions because I got my my customized chat GPT version because I
Mhm.
have my own, couple of versions that are like out of the platform just that I can use, and he kind of responded to me in what the symptoms and what I should be asking. And when I asked the doctor, he was not happy. He's like, "Oh, you guys all go to chat and stuff." I was like, "What's wrong with that? I mean,
Right.
you shouldn't be threatened with that. I'm just asking you because that's my limitations. You're the doctor, but at least I need to know what to ask for." Because if I didn't, I wouldn't even know what to look for. Right? At least I know something of something, right? So your tool is literally just in that line. I mean, you're gonna get some tools to give them to be able to talk at least the same jargon and language, because at the end of the day, if you don't know, you're not going to advocate, you're not even going to know what to
Right.
ask for. So
Right.
so thank you. Now you also have the guide, right? So that's available. Is that the
Biological Edge, the book.
yeah,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
book?
So
So
that's on
so
Amazon.
that's perfect. So people can
Yeah.
get that as well, and they can
Hmm.
just kind of get the nose. All right. Well, all right. So now one last question. I know we
Okay.
passed the hour, and there's so many things that I wanted to ask, but I think we covered a lot of grounds. So I know mold is really what was your problem, and yes, people can test for it personally, but is there a test that people can do home? That you recommend or that you've done to eradicate it from as a source?
So, oh, to test inside your home. I
Yeah.
think I didn't mention the test that I took. It was real-time labs that I had to find a doctor to administer to me because I lived in Florida. Some people can get that test on their own from the website. It's about $400. And then for your home, to test the air in your home, there's a service called Got Mold. And so if you go to gotmold.com, you can get a test to test your home air.
Right. Well, say that. Thank you. I mean, because I think that problem will remain and exist, and at least with people know what to
Yeah.
look for, they can at least find it, and I'm sure it's fixable. I mean, because I've read that it's hard to get rid of mold, but there's expertise and you can do some work. I mean, it may be costly, but it is a pain.
It's more challenging for renters because they're reliant on the landlord to take action. As a homeowner, your insurance will cover some of it or most of it. So if you've had a leaky pipe or something, my homeowner's insurance covered it. And so it's worth considering. I still had a hefty deductible, but it's
Like, yeah,
it was
listen,
better than it could have been.
we live
Yeah.
somewhere you're gonna have problems.
Mhm.
So certainly, but thank you for
And
sharing
don't
those
put
things. So
bleach on it. Don't put bleach on mold. It puts it into the air. So a lot of people bleach their mold. Don't do that. Vinegar and Dawn soap is how you clean mold.
vinegar.
Mhm.
Vinegar sounds like the cure for everything.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's the expression that says you get better with honey than you get with vinegar. I think we gotta put a little
I
bit
think we
vinegar.
get more with vinegar than honey lately.
Vinegar
At least
works
with
too.
mold.
So.
That's so funny.
All
Yeah.
right, well, Sandy, thank you so much for
Thanks,
really
Hurricane.
being with us. It's been fun. It's a lot of insights here. Well, folks, that's it. We're about the end of the show here. Hopefully, you take this. If you have someone that you think is not feeling good, maybe this can guide them to whatever direction they need to be. Uh, check out the actual website. I'll have it on the description of the show so you can actually use the tool, see what you can do, then find your way, a better health and live longer and prosperous.
There you go. Live long and
All right.
prosper.
That's it.
Thank
I
you.
can't do I can't do the broken stuff. I've
No.
tried, it doesn't work for me. Look at you.
Yeah, no,
No.
I'm long practiced at this. Bill
All
and I
right.
go way back.
Well, Comic Cons, yeah. So you definitely know this stuff. All right. Well, listen, Sandy, thank you so much. It's been
Thank you.
real. Thank you. All right. That's it, folks. I'm Hurricane H. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show on topic. Bye for now.